When Stray was announced in the summer of 2020, it turned many heads for its premise alone. Stray would be a puzzle adventure game starring an unanthropomorphized cat exploring a decaying walled city. It was a game about a cat doing cat things. One of the many titles Sony was teasing for its then upcoming console starred a cat as its protagonist. Stray released 2 years later in 2022. It received critical acclaim and garnered attention some developers could only dream of. Even people not known for their gaming opinions were talking about Stray. But there was one critique that I heard over and over again from those who were lukewarm on it. If this game didn't star a cat, no one would care about it. It's kind of a weird thing to say, isn't it, that something so core to Stray's identity would be called into question with such a dismissive attitude. It's a game about a cat. If there wasn't a cat in the cat game, then no one would play the cat game. It's like saying that no one would play Hitman if there weren't any hitmen. At least, that's what I thought before actually playing Stray myself. Midway through my journey through the walled city, I realized that this game that starred a cat wasn't about a cat. Okay, a few housekeeping things before we get too far. When I say protagonist, I'm referring to the central character in a story, the character the plot revolves around. Literary scholar C. Hugh Holman writes, in a Greek drama, the agon is a contest. The protagonist, the chief character, and the antagonist, the second most important character, are contenders in the agon. So essentially, the agon refers to the central conflict, while the protagonist refers to the main character embroiled in said conflict. The goals of the protagonist and antagonist sit on opposing sides of the agon. To keep things somewhat focused, I'll only be looking at games that focus on one playable character. There are plenty of stories that use ensembles, have multiple playable protagonists, or employ multiple viewpoints that I won't be covering here. I also won't be talking about games with character creators and the implications of that. These might be topics for another day. For the time being, I'll only be looking at games where, for the vast majority of the runtime, the player is in control of a single character authored by the developer. In Stray, the character is an unnamed orange cat. His story is a simple one. One day, while doing cat things, he falls into a walled city. When he regains consciousness, he has one goal: climb back to the top. In this sense, Stray tells a simple story about one thing. Except that's not really what Stray is about. Early on in his exploration, the cat meets BlueTwelve, an artificial intelligence with a memory problem. They may know a way out of the city, if only someone could help. BlueTwelve, despite their digital amnesia, knows their way around the walled city. They become the cat's mouthpiece, able to translate the beeps and boops of the robot language. BlueTwelve also has a much grander goal. While the cat just wants to get out of the walled city, BlueTwelve wants to free everyone trapped within. They want to learn about their past. They want to solve the mysteries plaguing the city's inhabitants. They want to uncover the conspiracy. Narratively speaking, BlueTwelve carries the most weight. BlueTwelve is the protagonist. The mystery of the walled city serves as Stray's agon. It's BlueTwelve's story. The cat is merely a vehicle for that story. There's an important distinction between a protagonist and a point of view character. Oftentimes they're one and the same, but sometimes the duties are split. The Great Gatsby is a classic example. Gatsby is the character who drives the story forward. It's all about him and his exploits. But the story is narrated by supporting character Nick Carraway. Nick is the point of view character, while Gatsby is the protagonist. The original Sherlock Holmes stories work in a similar way. Detective Holmes is the protagonist who moves the story along and solves the mysteries, yet the audience experiences this through the observations of his assistant, Dr. Watson. This split is fairly easy to accomplish in a novel format. Both examples are written in a first-person perspective. Both Nick and Watson refer to themselves as I while writing about the more interesting character. The split is obvious. We, the audience, are supposed to project ourselves onto these characters as Gatsby and Holmes' stories unfold. In film adaptations of these books, that distinction is obscured a bit. Outside of some niche exceptions, film is viewed from a third-person perspective. The audience watches the events unfold from an omniscient camera viewpoint. The camera does not represent a character. In these adaptations, Gatsby and Holmes are still the main characters. Nick and Watson are still present as point-of-view characters, but that's a little ambiguous. We follow Nick and Watson, sure, but their points of view aren't as literal as they are in the original novels. This isn't a bad thing, just a side effect of changing mediums. All that to say, games sit at an interesting intersection between first-person prose writing and audio-visual storytelling. In Stray, the player has direct control over one character, the cat. We view the story through the cat's perspective. The cat is the I. The cat is the Nick or the Watson. B12, however, is the Gatsby or the Holmes. B12 makes the important decisions that drive the plot forward. But that's another wrinkle. B12 makes decisions as a pre-written character. The places they want to visit and the robots they want to meet will be the same on every playthrough. However, the cat will make decisions that won't be the same each time. The cat, controlled by the player, could decide to find all the missing memories or skip them entirely. The cat can make B12 talk to all the side character robots, or not. So while B12 is making story decisions, the cat is making actual decisions that affect the experience. On the flip side, the cat's decisions don't really affect the story. Different players will talk to different robots and solve puzzles at different rates, but that stuff isn't important to the overall story Stray is telling. These bits of seasoning don't affect the overarching flavor. I don't know about you, but I love this stuff. Stray's cat is what I'd call a vehicle non-protagonist. The story of Stray unfolds like an on-rails carnival ride, and the cat is what moves the story along the tracks. The cat experiences the story but has little to no emotional stake in it. Classic cat attitude, really. Stray's cat is also fundamentally a blank slate character. The cat doesn't have a name or much of a personality beyond Stray Cat. I would argue that this is one of the aspects that made Stray's popularity so far-reaching. It allows cat-loving players to project their own feline friends onto Stray's kitty. Hey girlie, you want to save the world? Didn't think so. But what about a game where the player character has a little more definition? Hi-Fi Rush stars Chai. He's a 20-something wannabe rock star who accidentally gets a music player implanted into his chest while receiving a prosthetic arm. This makes him a defect, something Megacorp Vandelay wants to snuff out. Like the cat in Stray, Chai has one simple goal: survive. And he does. With music pulsating in every direction, he's able to fight his way through the game's opening. It isn't long before he meets Peppermint, a woman who has a history with Vandelay and wants to shut down the secret, shady project they're cooking up. Chai reluctantly joins Peppermint's cause, and they go about with their infiltration plans. Like B12 and Stray, Peppermint is the brains of the operation. She's the character that recruits the other team members. She's the one with the most personal history with the antagonistic corporation. She's the one who develops the plans and has the most impactful emotional beats. Really, this is a story about her. Chai just happens to be the muscle on the task force. But unlike the cat, Chai has loads of agency and character growth. He goes from being a hapless goofball to becoming a confident, capable, and respected member of the team. Peppermint, meanwhile, becomes the great leader she was destined to become. She learns how to work with others to accomplish her goals. She has the strongest emotional through-line as well. No spoilers, but when the game slows down for a tender moment, it's not for Chai, but for her. So which arc is more important? Which character is the protagonist? If we're talking strictly in gameplay terms, then it's Chai, hands down. He's the one that runs and jumps and smashes things. He is the character that the gameplay system, which is absolutely fire by the way, is built around. But if we're talking in story terms, and only in story terms, then Chai becomes the point of view character, while Peppermint takes on the role of the protagonist. She calls the shots and makes decisions that affect the trajectory of the narrative. If the agon is the quest to take down Vandelay, Peppermint leads that particular charge. But then again, Chai does have a character arc. He gets far and away the most screen time. One could argue that his personal growth, which is happening within the overall plot being driven by Peppermint, is the pulsating heart of the story. But even then, the team is larger than just the two of them. Another character named Macaron joins the squad, and he has his own character arc, similar to Chai's. What makes Chai's arc more important than Macaron's is because one is controllable and the other isn't. They're both on the same team, though, Peppermint's team. Did I mention that I love this kind of stuff? Of course, Chai is far from the first controllable character who receives instructions from someone else. In Resident Evil 4, venturing to save the president's daughter isn't initially Leon's idea. There's the famous "would you kindly" instructions from BioShock, and of course military shooters fall into this camp as well. But Peppermint and Chai's dynamic feels different somehow. She's not actually on the ground smashing robots, but she's still hands-on with the mission. Her motivations aren't a mystery. She's nothing if not genuine, she just needs Chai's help. If I had to put him into a classic literary character class though, Chai would be a Deuteragonist, a character that's close to the spotlight but not in it entirely. Even though he's an important character, he's not the leader of the team, and since he doesn't push back against Peppermint's leadership, his arc never usurps hers. That being said, while Hi-Fi Rush does have a good story and great humor, no one is really there for its narrative. Hi-Fi Rush is a music-based action game with tight combat, amazing visuals, and vibes on vibes on vibes. That's what Hi-Fi Rush is about, smacking a robot R3 with your junk guitar to the beat of a Nine Inch Nails song. In a way, the fact that we can question who the protagonist is feels accidental. In Stray, the audience is there to explore. In Hi-Fi Rush, the audience is there to dance and fight. The attached stories to both of these experiences feel kind of arbitrary. But what about a game that unquestionably subverts the idea of a protagonist on purpose? What about a game that places a larger emphasis on its narrative? A game that bakes its subversion into the very core of its design? Wandersong stars the Bard, a happy-go-lucky boy who just wants to sing. He's not a warrior or much of a hero, yet he's the protagonist of this story. Or is he? After learning that the world is going to end, the Bard sets off on a quest to learn the Earth Song, a tune that could prevent the apocalypse, but inconveniently has to be learned piece by piece by the overseers in the spirit world, because video games. Along the way, he meets Miriam the Witch, who would much rather use magic to solve the problems ahead, but the Bard insists on singing. He insists on solving things without the use of violence. He and Miriam travel the world, meeting people, writing songs, and solving puzzles every step of the way. But things aren't as simple as they seem. A warrior by the name of Audrey also knows that the world is ending. She thinks that killing the overseers will bring about a better future. Instead of her voice, she lets her sword that shoots lightning do the talking. She is the more standard video game protagonist. Everywhere Audrey goes, she's referred to as the hero, not only by the characters in the game, but by the game itself. Everywhere the Bard travels, Audrey is understood to be the main character. The Bard is just a guy who sings. On Steam, all of the achievements are tied not to the Bard's actions, but to Audrey's. If we're to believe what Wandersong tells us, the Bard is the antagonist. The happy singing boy who wants to save the world through kindness is standing in the way of the hero's goals. Wandersong presents itself like a story from a side character's perspective. If Audrey's side of the story is Hamlet, then the Bard's is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. If Audrey's is Beowulf, then the Bard's is Grendel. If Audrey's is the Three Little Pigs, then the Bard's is the true story of the Three Little Pigs. Audrey ticks the standard protagonist boxes. Her journey takes her from place to place, slaying creature after creature while receiving glory in every corner of the world. There is something fascinating about the way the Bard and the player watch the events of Audrey's journey unfold in the background. It's easy to see the Bard's pacifist actions as frivolous, a frustration that Miriam expresses throughout the story. Why can't he just solve his problems like a regular video game character? The audience, however, knows that they're not supposed to believe Wandersong's lies. The Bard is absolutely the protagonist, from both a gameplay and story perspective. He's the character with the most development. He's the character who makes the decisions that dictate where the story will go. The Bard is the one who chooses not to use violence. The audience views the Agon from his perspective. But he is a subversive protagonist. Wandersong calls the main character status into question to explore the story's greater themes of nonviolence. In a medium where just about all problems can be solved through combat, the Bard doesn't fit the typical mold. He doesn't fight, he sings. Which action takes more courage? There's a larger discussion to be had about storytelling frameworks and whether or not they're outdated, especially in Western media. While I personally don't think the three-act structure or the hero's journey are going anywhere, it's nice to experience something that challenges these established tropes. Stray, Hi-Fi Rush, and Wandersong are just 3 examples of titles experimenting with established storytelling formulas. I'm sure there are countless more. Even though their plots are straightforward, the way they handle their cast of characters is anything but. The relationship between player, point of view character, and main character are muddied, and that beautiful muddiness can only be achieved in interactive media. I would argue that video games, with their added layer of interactivity, are uniquely positioned to challenge established frameworks, especially when it comes to characters and their assigned roles in a story. Gaming is the medium best suited to challenge our notions of what a protagonist can be.